the show, your one-on-one with Wes the Sports Guy here on YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey, and online all the time at westhesportsguy.com. You can get all the social media links, the podcast link, all the links to those video sites that I mentioned, conveniently located for you at westhesportsguy.com. Now, there's many different directions I could have gone with this week's episode. I could have gone specifically with a NASCAR story and ESPN lying about it once again. I could also talk about with what's going on in the NFL, NBA, and NHL, that they're postponing games, regular season games, and more specifically in the NFL where you got the playoffs coming around the corner, and you're postponing games and pushing them back later in the week with a current week of games that are slated to start like now, Saturday and Sunday, as we head into the crunch of playoff time in the NFL. There's also another story that should be a national discussion about men playing in women's sports. But the overall theme that I really want to take with this week's episode, as you can tell in the title when you started watching this here at YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey, make sure you subscribe, hit that link below to get notified when all the latest videos are posted on those channels. Get the links at westhesportsguy.com, is there's a lot of lying going on. And that's the highlight that I want to put into this, is that the lying needs to stop, truth needs to have its day, and I'm just going to drop some truth into these three specific stories and not go on a tangent about them, but just give you the truth, because you're not getting the truth in a lot of areas that should be telling you the actual truth with these stories. The first one we'll start with is Bubba Wallace, a NASCAR driver, and ESPN decided to tweet out a promo for it's not really a documentary or a 30 for 30, but just a featurette, you could say, about Bubba Wallace and the incident where it was reported that there was a noose in the garage that he was going to be racing at in Talladega last season. Turns out that was not a noose, it was a garage door rope, if you will, but a garage door pulley. It's a handle to pull down the garage door. And it's been there forever. In that specific one, the one that had the picture and all that stuff, and ESPN even reported after they sent 12 FBI agents to investigate this, that's what was found to be true of the story. Nobody planted anything on the car, on the floor, on a table, on a shelf. This was a garage door pulley. That's all it was. ESPN reported that as fact after the investigation of 12 FBI agents, and yet ESPN is still perpetuating the lie in a promo tweet for this feature on Bubba Wallace. You can't make this up. It's still a lie that you're perpetuating, ESPN. The truth is, it was not anything vile towards Bubba Wallace. It was a lie. The second one is a University of Pennsylvania, an Ivy League school, a swimmer who is a man, swam on the men's team for 3 years, decides he wants to be a woman, goes through the required suppressing of testosterone for a full year, as the NCAA requires, suppresses testosterone for a year. He now is competing currently on the women's team at the University of Pennsylvania, the same school he was competing as a man for 3 years. He is now smashing records, swimming as a woman at the University of Pennsylvania. How is this fair? I ask this from the standpoint of he has been a man almost his entire life now, other than this over 1 year period where he's transitioning. He has all that built up testosterone currently in his system, albeit suppressing it for a year as required by the NCAA, and he is now competing as a woman on the women's team and smashing records. How is this fair? Honest question. Anybody that is for the equality and women are just as good as men and all that stuff are suspiciously quiet about this one. But that is an honest question. How is this fair for women's sports. And the third part of this video that I want to focus on a little bit more here to finish up is with COVID. Just going to flat out say what it is. I'm not going to beat around the bush anymore. If YouTube decides, hey, I'm not good enough for this, I don't care to be ever monetized on the platform if they ever do allow me to be monetized, because the door's being shut behind others that have been established, and then they're pushing others out that are established that don't fit the narrative anymore on YouTube. This isn't an attack on the platform. I do appreciate that it's there. I appreciate that BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey are there as well. But I'm going to call it as it is with COVID and anything else surrounding it, including the shots, the jabs, the boosters, whatever you want to call those things. I'm not beating around the bush anymore. I'm done with it. The truth is going to have its day, and I need to explain things matter-of-factly in order to let that stand on its own going forward. With that said, you have the NFL, the NHL, and the NBA who boast about how almost the entire player spectrum, and they're, essentially forcing any staff, coaches, and whatnot to get a jab. Almost every single player in all three of those professional leagues have gotten the jab. And now you are seeing you could say, a somewhat of an outbreak going on with mostly vaccinated players and players that have already gotten COVID before, players that are getting it again. And I'm not differentiating, or trying to bring a correlation between the jab and COVID, but you've been told for well over a year now that these vaccines, in quotations, the jab, you will not spread COVID getting the jab. That's a lie. It's been a provable lie this entire time. The honest bone in anybody for the media, whether it be to the White House or going to any of these sports leagues, the honest question needs to now be asked going forward about the jab and with COVID. If you are touting the success of the jab and saying this is a great thing and it's so good that almost all of our players are doing this left and right, we're singing our praises and everything else, but yet you've got a bit of an outbreak going on where you're now postponing games almost left and right at a very rapid pace, not as rapid as what was happening when the COVID stuff was starting to happen and you had to shut everything down. It hasn't gotten to that level. I don't expect it to, mind you. But the honest question needs to be asked about what is going on with this whole jab situation going forward. Do these work or don't they work? What about this control group? This control group of the sports leagues, these three specifically, NBA, NFL, NHL, almost a 100% rate of jab, and yet you have this outbreak. What does that say about the jab? Is anybody going to ask that question for this control group, for these three sports leagues? Is anybody going to ask Lord Farquaad? Is anybody going to ask Biden about this? Is anybody going to ask that question at the White House? Anybody? Is anybody going to ask that of Commissioner Roger Goodell in the NFL? Commissioner Adam Silver in the NBA? Commissioner Gary Bettman in the NHL? Are you going to ask that question about their protocols? Are their players fed up with this now? That I went through all that stuff to get jabbed, to not have to wear a mask, to not have to go through all those protocols. Granted, you still get tested at a once-a-week rate if most of the leagues agree to that, or if it's every other day, whatever the case may be for the leagues. But you're not testing as much. You're not wearing a mask. You're not told you have to wear a mask. You did all that, and yet now you've got to this point where you're losing games, postponements. They're not canceled, but you're postponing games. You're messing up the schedule in mid-season, and you're also changing things on the fly because you still have no idea how to handle this stuff going forward. So doesn't the question then beg to be asked of the sports leagues, when are you going to decide you have to live with it? Enough of testing anything and everything under the sun. You're going to have to live with it. Has any of these guys that have tested in the past and present, have they ever been hospitalized? Have they ever had serious complications with this stuff going forward? Have any of them? Do we get that information? We don't see that very often when you announce that guys have tested positive. But do you get the other information about it? These are healthy individuals in the prime of their life. They have the best healthcare in the world you could ask for, and yet you can't play the game because of COVID. Make no mistake, though. The truth is going to have its day, one way or another. The truth always reveals itself, whether it's allowed or it's forcing its way in. It's going to happen sooner rather than later, I believe. But the truth is slowly revealing itself to the point where you cannot hide anymore. Sports is the ultimate equalizer in that when you see something happening in your day-to-day life, specifically with COVID, where it's like, I'm going to have to rethink that one. I'm going to have to, what's another example that I can, analyze, or an analogy that I could use to, contrast this with that? Oh, here's a sports league. Oh, they're just going out there. They're, going up against each other in the NHL, in the NBA, the NFL. Has there ever been a proven case of transmission while they're going up against each other, bumping into each other, grabbing a ball, going for the puck, shooting it, throwing the football, trying to catch it, deflecting it, defending, all that stuff? Has there ever been a proven case of transmission through all that stuff? Any sport. Soccer, that's another one. Baseball, has that ever been a proven transmissible case? I could go on and on and on about this stuff. I'm a stat guy. I could really lay things out for you if I really want to. I don't, because this is a sports channel. But this is the ultimate equalizer that I'm proving the point going forward, that all of this nonsense is coming to an end, and it needs to, sooner rather than later. These leagues need to wise up and realize if they're not going to be told to do it by the powers that be, they need to do it on their own. And the players and their unions, if they have any backbone whatsoever, need to get their butts in gear. End this nonsense. There are common sense ways to go about this, and you can still keep everybody safe. Yes, you still can't spread this to others that are at risk. We all know this. But that's for any viral disease as well that we know of. With everything that we know about this virus to this day, and we're still learning stuff every day, I will grant that. But everything that we know now is contrary to what they were telling us from the very beginning, even going up until now. They have tried to have it both ways, and they are losing that argument day by day, hour by hour. The powers that be cannot control any of that information anymore. It is at your disposal. Please look up information for yourself. Obviously, you never take anybody's word for it. Don't even take my word for it, but I do thank you for tuning in. But all this information is easily available to you, and you can just think for yourself for a few moments to realize that this has not been at all what you have believed it to be when they tried to strike fear in the hearts of individuals from this in the very beginning. And thankfully, we do have these jabs that do help people at some differing levels. But for the vast majority of these athletes, it hasn't done anything for them. And I don't think it ever will. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell below to get notified when all the latest videos are posted on this channel, whether it be at YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, or Odyssey. Bookmark westthesportsguy.com for all those videos, social media links, video links, everything there. The podcast link also located conveniently for you at westthesportsguy.com. I will see you next time.